Welcome everyone, Christine here with a quick discussion about Kugath Plague Fodder in Total War Warhammer 3, Immortal Empires, patch 3.0, The Forge of the Chaos Dwarves. Has his campaign been improved in any way, shape or form? Kugath has long been considered the worst legendary lord in Total War Warhammer 3. This was the case in Realms of Chaos. Well, you do have Daniel out there, of course, but also in Immortal Empires. The only legendary lords that are worse to play are Daniel and Kairos, but at least Kairos does accomplish a lot of things if he's played by the AI, because Kairos just doesn't have anyone that can easily take him out, and the only one who can traverse the Southern Chaos Waste is Axolotl, but Axolotl's army is just isn't good and not resolved, so AI Kairos will beat AI Axolotl, regardless of how much Kairos may suffer in order to do so, but he will win that fight. So has Creative Assembly changed anything for him? Not in terms of his faction effects, not in terms of his lord effects, based on everything that I've seen so far, not in terms of his economy, or research, or anything like that. The only things they've done is that because of some of the changes in Darklands, and of course the addition of the Chaos Dwarves themselves, he might have some better opportunities in his campaign. So Pig Barter, for instance, will now give you a landmark that can give you income, casualty replenishment, regeneration for Rotfly units. The problem is actually getting Pig Barter ahead of Drazov, who is going to end up at war with the Ogre faction here, and likely will wipe them out before you. Because it's not like you have a free ride over there to Pig Barter, you have to deal with Gorst in this campaign. But Drazov can protect, and will protect, your western flank. The thing is, you might want to go to the west yourself if you're playing as Kugath, because going anywhere else is a bit of a problem in many substantial ways. So Drazov being on the campaign map isn't necessarily a benefit unless you do go for Pig Barter yourself very quickly, but then you might want to sell Pig Barter anyway to Drazov, because you do want to at least have someone to help you out as a military ally in your campaign. And doing that is probably the best way of achieving a military alliance with Drazov. Drazov doesn't hate you, but he doesn't care about you. This is how Chaos factions feel towards the Chaos Dwarves themselves. So if you're playing a Chaos Dwarf, the Chaos factions are just completely neutral towards you. Though of course you do have some research and other things that can improve your diplomatic relations. All the other factions that you start near do hate you as Kugath. So you start over here in the Dragon Fang Mount, which does have a landmark that can generate a fair amount of income, especially if you upgrade it to tier 3, though it is an expensive building to get, and you start a war with the Lizardmen. So while Drazov helps you out, securing your western flank against Emmerich in particular, who in the current live version tends to dominate this particular area of the campaign map, because he will win against Stretch. We'll see. I'm curious to see how in a long campaign Emmerich fares against Drazov, because it's likely they're going to end up at war. They haven't so far in this particular campaign, but I think it's kind of unavoidable, because Emmerich and Drazov have a minus 100 aversion towards each other. So that's one thing that the Chaos Dwarves do for you. It's probably the only thing that the Chaos Dwarves do for you as Kugath. Protection from the west, from Emmerich, and to a certain extent Tretch Craventail. But interestingly enough, there's landmarks over here in the west that you may want to go for. Though, funnily enough, the Tower of the Bloody Tooth at tier 3 gives you a garrison of White Lions of Crix as Kugath. Though I haven't captured it, maybe it's just a tooltip error. It would be quite hilarious if he was so forgotten and ignored by Creative Assembly that he would actually get the White Lions of Crix garrison when you play them. Might be the case, may not be the case, might be just a tooltip issue with the landmark. I've seen some of those, but like as Emmerich, there's a missing tooltip over here for Bitter Bay until you actually get the settlement. Then the tooltip actually works. So it's hard to say what that would do without capturing it. And dealing with Emmerich as Kugath is a difficult proposition, because you may have the ability to take down Emmerich's army, but you're going to struggle to deal with Emmerich himself, because Emmerich himself, once he gets that dragon mount of his, and once he gets his skill line, his items, which he has gotten his items over here, he's going to be very, very difficult for you to take down. You just don't have the damage ability to do so very easily. But of course, the first issue is Gorst, and what's really frustrating about dealing with Gorst? Gorst is a powerful legendary lord, and one of the things that makes him so powerful is when you defeat his army, he might regenerate a lot of the troops in it if he's in a province with high vampire corruption. And he's obviously at war with the Skaven over here in Nabalar country. He's gonna take it over, and so you're gonna be fighting Gorst when he does declare war on you, and he does despise you. You're gonna be fighting him in an area with high vampire corruption. That means he gets a lot of raised dead. That means he will recover very quickly in a battle. It took me 20 turns over here to deal with Gorst. I just barely dealt with him. And that's just the initial situation. Consider this. Gorst is your early game enemy. One of the most powerful legendary lords in the game is your early game enemy. Now, this is not necessarily an issue in its own right for other campaigns. Like if you're playing a Chaos Dwarf, Zaytan, or Astrogoth in particular, you're going to be dealing with Grimgor pretty quickly. If you're playing in Drazov, you're going to be dealing with Emmerich and Tretch. And while Tretch is a joke, Emmerich is not. But the thing about those campaigns is you have the tools needed to succeed. You don't have the tools needed to succeed as Kugath. But what are the problems for Kugath? Well, he does have good growth, really, really good growth, and he does have the plagues. But that's kind of where the benefits stop with him. His economy is incredibly limited. He can generate a lot of money, but the problem is he won't do so consistently because he has the cycle for the buildings, for his economic buildings, or all the buildings basically, with like the exception of ports and main structures in a province and resource structures and landmarks, of course. But the main buildings he's using have this cycle. But the downside of this is, one, when you do just build them, they're generating very little income. They can get to a pretty high level, especially certain buildings like the Living Tree, which can generate up to 700 income. But it is slow. It is a slow cycle. It takes a lot of time to get going. It takes a long, long, long time to get to the highest benefit. And you have no consistency in your economy. So that means you have no guarantee that your economy is not just going to go under at a certain point. You probably would have to calculate it very carefully to be able to understand how that's going to be. So that's one of the problems. His baseline economy is weak, and this is made worse by the fact that the structures, yeah, he only needs to build them once, but he's basically paying the price up front for them at the highest possible level. So a basic structure in infrastructure costs 2,000. A basic military structure costs 5,000. An advanced military structure over here, the two of them cost 10,000 each. So he's paying a significant price for these structures over here in his empire. Now, the way Kugath recruits units is he summons them. He doesn't summon them at full HP, so if I just get a unit of Nurglings here, it's not going to be full HP. It can get to a higher HP, of course, but typically speaking, you're going to recruit units like these Plague Toes over here, like at about half strength. Now, this was something taken from Thrones of Britannia. This is where the system is from, where you recruit a unit instantly, but you don't recruit it at full strength. Thankfully, you do have good casualty replenishment. Those are the benefits, by the way, you have in this campaign. The plagues, the growth, the good casualty replenishment. The army, it can be good. The problem isn't that Kugath can't get a good army, especially if you get the Chaos Warrior units, starting with Marauders into Chaos Warriors. It can be a fairly good army. The issue is getting to that point and maintaining multiple good armies, which you would need in this campaign. So those are significant limiting factors, which Creative Assembly hasn't changed at all. People have asked me, by the way, about various lores, like has Orion been nerfed or anything like that. Now, I want people to take this with... I want people to understand that right now we're still in like a pre-launch build, and there's likely going to be some patch. I'm kind of hoping with the full launch version that we do get some changes to the lore defects, some more bug fixes. But at the moment, it doesn't seem to me, I could be wrong on this, but from what I've seen, no legendary lord in the game that exists already has had any changes in terms of their lord skill or their faction effects. Now, I could be wrong, I might have just missed it, I might not have looked all that closely, but for instance, Orion still has the same upkeep benefit. But whether or not Creative Assembly changes that for the launch, what's going to be in the patch notes, we don't know. We don't have patch notes at the moment. We didn't get any provided by Creative Assembly. And I think that's because they haven't finalized them yet. That's my understanding of the matter. They haven't finalized the patch notes, what they're going to include and what we're going to get. So this may not be the final form you see for these Legendary Lords, but I don't think that we're going to see solutions to someone like Kugath or the Empire or the Dwarves or any of those races and Legendary Lords that do struggle significantly at the moment. What Creative Assembly has done, I'm not accusing, by the way, Creative Assembly of being lazy. They had the priority in this DLC, and that priority was to make the Chaos Dwarves, to redefine the Darklands. It seems that what Creative Assembly has really put a lot of effort in is with terrain, with the landmarks, with the settlements, not with the lords. The lords, the other Legendary Lords, haven't really been a priority for them, with exception, like, of course, the Chaos Dwarf Legendary Lords themselves. But what they've done for a lot of campaigns, the way they've improved a lot of campaigns, like Emmeric's campaign is better. Not sure how to feel about Trench. I guess you could say Trench's campaign is better, but, I mean, he's still Trench at the end of the day. Is Grease's better? I wouldn't say so. In fact, I'd say Grease's is screwed either way, but he was screwed to begin with. But looking at the situation right here, I mean, it's turn 21. Grimgor sometimes expands very quickly. Other times he doesn't expand as quickly. Depends on what's happening in his campaign. Although in this particular case, I think Grimgor has decided he's going to kill Astrogoth, funnily enough. Or he's going to move west over here against Astrogoth. Not entirely certain what he's decided to do, what AI Grimgor has decided to do. But he's moving west. He's not moving north. But we get Kholek showing up down here, down south here, which is even better. Now, here's the problem. Beyond Gorse, beyond the Lizardmen, beyond Emmerich to the west, which hopefully Drazov would deal with him in this campaign. The issue is you can't expand north in the mountains more because it's unsuitable climate. So those construction costs you're already paying will go up significantly, and you just don't have the money for it. So going into the mountains of Morn, not the wisest idea by any stretch of imagination. Going west, if you can beat Emmerich, sure, but it will create a lot of issues as well in your campaign if you do so. Because you're going to leave your entire northern flank exposed, and you can be certain that if Greases doesn't declare war on you, which might very well happen, then that Grimgor, when he finally does show up, absolutely will. And then you have the issue to the east. Like, Noblar Country is a great province from an economic standpoint. If you're playing as Gorst, it's an amazing situation. But Gorst, for whatever reason, is actually liked by Xiao Ming. It's a bizarre situation. Like, for instance, over here, Xiao Ming declared war on me, but one of the reasons he declared war on me is, like, I got the minus 129 aversion because I wiped out Gorst. It's like, why are you friends with Helman Gorst, of all people? And the problem is, I could ignore Noblar Country and abandon it and instead head elsewhere while having Xiao Ming just biting on my heels, taking my territory. And I can't defeat Xiao Ming. Xiao Ming is far more powerful than one might imagine in a campaign. Like, look at this. He's got 2 armies over here. One is heading my way. He's got the 3rd over here in the north. Sure, there's Snitch, there's some other factions that are going to put pressure on him, but I'm not sure if I took my entire stack of troops over here that I could beat Xiao Ming. And it doesn't matter if I can beat his main army, because unless I am able to beat all of his armies, then that's going to be an issue. And even if I rush Xiao Ming, then I'll just have more issues later on, because I'm leaving myself opened completely to the west, to the north. This is a problem with playing a limited campaign where you can really only afford one army for a very substantial portion of it, because you can't maintain 2 armies as Kugath. Even if you just recruit Nurglings, and Nurglings are not going to be able to stop someone like Xiao Ming or Greases. Even if you just recruit them, it's not going to be good enough. So limitations, and here's where it gets even worse, believe it or not. See, your campaign victory conditions, short form, makes sense, right? You don't have to worry about Helheim or Karakazul, you just need to defeat Gorst. Not too big of an issue. Defeating Gorst is a major problem. But long campaign victory condition is absolutely ridiculous. Effectively, you need to go into the Southern Cast Wastes. Look at where you start, right? Look at where you start here. Look at where the Southern Cast Wastes is. And when you do arrive in the Southern Cast Wastes, unless you get really, really lucky, then Kairos is going to be very substantial as a faction. Like, look at the situation Kairos has in this campaign. Like, Kairos is weak if you play him, but he's very powerful if he's played by the AI. He has 2 entire stacks over here of troops, almost 2 entire stacks. He's going to get the third, and Oxyatol's little crusade over here is only going to last until the armies here from the east march west and wipe him out. Teclis is not going to help you. And another problem is quite a bit of the climate along, or some of the climate along the way, at least in the crater of the Waking Dead, is completely uninhabitable. Sure, you could ignore the province and just head over here, then fight Krakar and Teclis just to reach Kairos. So your campaign victory conditions just don't make sense given your campaign starting position. It gets even worse when you start looking at some of the research that he actually has. So one of the pieces of research that he has just absolutely doesn't make sense. So he does have Despicable Rival, so that gives you 7 leadership, spell resistance, missile resistance when fighting against Tzeentchian factions. Completely worthless benefit over here for much of the campaign. Only useful if much later on. Obviously would give you a benefit that you need early on, later on in that particular campaign. I believe he also gets a research benefit. Yeah, he gets a growth and recruitment cost benefit in settlements with chaotic wasteland climates. The reason he has these kind of things is because in Realms of Chaos, his campaign actually makes sense in Realms of Chaos. I mean, he's still pretty weak in Realms of Chaos, don't get me wrong on that, but he starts in this Chaos Wastes. And he does start close enough to Tzeentchian factions that kind of benefit would absolutely work. But this is not Realms of Chaos, and Kugath just feels completely out of place considering his campaign goals, his campaign research, the way his faction is designed. Like, even a powerful Legendary Lord would struggle with the start position. Kugath just isn't a powerful Legendary Lord. I mean, he's unironically the best duelist in the game in 1v1 duels, though keeping in mind the skirmish duels don't account for the proper power that the Legendary Lord has on their campaign. I'm sure on the campaign, like someone like Malice Darkblade or even Scarbrand, who gets regeneration in his special skill, let alone the items you can get, would probably eat Kugath alive. But Kugath is certainly a powerful duelist, regardless of that. His army, though, is just weak. I mean, it does have high HP, but it doesn't have good armor, so Atrazov's situation is not great. When you go into a battle, you're going to take a significant amount of damage with all your units. Eventually, if you switch to Chaos Warriors of Nurgle and then Chosen of Nurgle, yes, that becomes a very, very different situation. Bearing in mind that you do need the Champions of Chaos DLC with that. And if you have the Champions of Chaos DLC, you want to play a Nurgle campaign, play Festus. He's substantially better as a Nurgle campaign. You get all the plagues, pretty much all the demonic units of Nurgle. The important ones anyway. And you still have all the plagues, like all the plagues, and you have an easier way to get those plagues because you just have to use them again. Like Festus is a better plague fodder campaign in virtually every single way that matters. I mean, there's a good demonic campaign, and it's Nakari's campaign. Even if for all the issues Nakari's campaign has, it can be a blast at least early on dealing with Ulfa and Confederate. After that, it kind of gets really boring and annoying to deal with Nakari. But that early game situation where you're dealing with Telfarian, Tyrion, and all that, and you're playing every battle to win, and you can win. That's the crucial thing. Your army will devastate them on an open field. It's just the siege battles that create a lot of issues for Nakari. Kugath, however, doesn't have a great army. His enemies in the nearby vicinity are much powerful than him. Kairos is much more powerful than him on the campaign situation, and to even get to Kairos, it is quite a nightmare. So yeah, Kugath is the Forgotten Legendary Lord right now in the game. I mean, there's Forgotten races as well. Like, the Empire hasn't been updated in a very long time. And I don't think I want to talk about the Dwarves for the moment. I will talk about the Dwarves, the regular Order Dwarves, and what has become of them. I'm just going to wait to see what the official patch notes are, however, with that. And to see if there's maybe some last minute update that changes things, because I don't want to get ahead of myself. Cosine here signing out. Don't forget to subscribe, like, enable notifications, and I'll see you boys and girls next time.